going to show you how to make the free heart coaster from Kreative Kiwi. For this I'm going to be using my 5x7 hoop, a layer of cutaway stabiliser, some monofilament for the quilting because I've got quite fussy fabrics, so I don't want to put another colour over the top as it won't show. I'm going to use silver thread throughout the whole of the project, but you can use whatever colours you want. I've got some pins. Any pins with heads will work fine, and that's for stabilising your stabiliser in the hoop. Some squizzers, masking tape, and my fabrics and batting cut to size. I'm going to show you two ways of doing the backing on this coaster. The first one is as per the instructions with an envelope backing. I know many people don't like doing envelope backs because it uses a lot of fabric, so I'm going to show you how to do the back with a single layer of fabric that will cover the whole of the coaster, but it will involve a little bit of hand stitching to close the gap. You will find a link to this design in the video description below, along with lots of other information about where I get my supplies and some discount codes for you as well, so please do take the time to have a look. As always, you're going to start off by hooping your layer of cutaway stabiliser, and then we're going to pin around the top edge of our hoop to stop it being pulled down between the two parts of the hoop. So take your pin, lay it on top of your inner hoop, push it through your stabiliser, and then bring it back round and through again. The bigger the hoop, the more pins you will use. Load your file into your machine along with a neutral thread, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your batting. Place your batting over the outline and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. You're now going to trim up the excess batting from around the stitch line. Place your outer frame fabric over the batting and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3. We're now going to place your centre fabric over the outline in the middle here. Now if you've got a really dark fabric and you're putting a light one on top, you can remove the fabric from here, and that's what we're going to do. So I just take a stitch unpicker, and then I'm going to create a little slit just big enough for me to get my scissors in, and then I'm going to trim out the centre here. Once you've trimmed out the centre, if you're putting a dark fabric on dark, you don't have to worry obviously because it's not going to show through. I'm just showing you today, I am using a dark centre, so normally I wouldn't have cut it out. So place your fabric over the area that you've just trimmed out, and then you're going to tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 4, and that's going to secure it in place. We've now got the outline for your heart fabric, so place your fabric over the outline and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 5, and that's going to secure it. We're We're now going to trim up the excess fabric from around the heart and the inner frame. Now going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to zigzag around the raw edges of the heart and the inner frame. Change your thread to whichever colour you want for the quilting, and then you're going to stitch round number 7, and that's going to quilt this area here. Change your thread colour to whichever colour you want for the satin stitching around the inner frame, and then you're going to stitch round number 8. Change your thread to whichever colour you want for the heart, and then you're going to stitch round number 9. Next is colour number 11, and that's going to give you the sketch lines, or the arty bit, if you like, over the top of your heart. If you don't want to stitch this, you don't have to, you can skip colour 11. If you're not sure how to do that, then refer to your machine's user manual. For the envelope back, you're going to take your first piece of fabric and you're going to place it with the fold towards the middle of your hoop, and you want to make sure that it overlaps the outer stitch line. I'm using scraps, so this is going to be a little bit tight, but it'll be fine. Okay, so then place your second piece again with the fold towards the middle of your hoop over the top, and then you're going to tape it in place. One area that you do need to pay particular attention to is the overlap here, because as your foot travels round it can get caught underneath, so make sure that you've got tape holding it down to prevent that. You're then going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 11, and that's going to secure these fabrics in place. If you want to use one piece of fabric for your backing, place it over the outer stitch line, and I've cut my fabric to the same size as my outer frame fabric. Sorry, I've got a pen here that's water soluble, and I'm just going to mark 2 lines. One there. It's going to be hard for you to see, I appreciate that, but you will see it why I'm putting it in a little while. So I've drawn 2 lines there and there, and now I'm going to tape my fabric in place. What we're going to do, we're going to stitch all the way around to this line, then we're going to advance. You can either trim your fabric or you can skip stitches to the next line, and then we'll carry on stitching around to the finish. So I'm now going to skip stitches, not colours, stitches, until I get to the line that I drew. That will be fine. I've skipped 30 stitches there, and then I'm going to carry on. I'm going to cut this thread in the middle, and that allows me enough of a tail if I needed to tie off each side, because this is going to leave the opening for us to turn our coaster. So there's our envelope backing, and here's the alternative version. We can now free our work from the hoop. I'm going to start with the envelope back. We're now going to trim up around the edge, and we need to leave 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. If you're doing the alternative version, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. However, where we've got our opening, I'm just going to trim off this excess stabilizer here. We're going to cut down a little way, but still leaving 1/4 of an inch, and this will allow us to press it and turn it and then press it, and we'll have a very neat seam because you've got a slightly longer fabric here that you can tuck in. So I'm now going to trim all the way around as I did for the other one. And I'm just going to cut up to my other cut that I put in first. And that has now left an area that we can turn our coaster. So to get nice neat corners, you want to snip towards the stitch line, taking care not to cut it. I'm going to do the same with my other coaster with the envelope back as well. I'm going to turn this out the right way, so just push your thumb into the corner and then push through with the finger. And I'm just going to push the corners out nice and neatly with the blunt end of my scissors. You can use chopstick, you can use whatever you like. Just take care not to cut the stitching, of course. And where we've snipped around the corner, it will sit nice and flat. And all I do is I go round and I just roll the edge where my seam is, and that helps it to sit nice and flat. This coaster finished, I would now press that just so that it all sits nicely on the seams. I'm going to put this one aside and bring the alternative version in. So we're now going to do the same. We're going to turn this inside out through the opening that we left earlier. In exactly the same way, I'm going to push my corners out. And I'm going to roll my edges. Now is to close this gap, but before I do that, I'm going to tuck these ends in, and I'm going to press them so that they're held neatly in place while I stitch them. So there's the two backs. That's my envelope back here, and there's the front. So that's all finished. With the alternative back, I've slip stitched along here. Now you will notice that I've got a stitch line showing. You won't have, because you will have stitched round number 11 to close it. I used round number 1 because I forgot to put my machine back, and there's a slight difference in where the stitch lines sit, so I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to be too bothered by it, and I've just slip stitched so that it all matches where the opening is, and I'm just finishing up here. And I use embroidery thread to stitch because it doesn't tangle the same way that ordinary sewing cotton does. So that's my slip stitching. I'm just going to tie that off now. And I'm just going to hide my thread by pushing my needle through and bringing it out somewhere else. And then when I cut that, it's going to disappear inside of my coaster, so you don't have any thready bits hanging off the edge. And that's the alternative one finished as well. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of new videos as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's always lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. There's a link to this design along with lots of other information and discount codes in the video description below.